Maybe someday. Oh, and now we're live. Already. Oh, look at that! Got a little notification and everything. Oh, and severe thunderstorm warning. Well, this will be exciting. In case I lose connection or whatever, y'all know what the hell happened then, right?
Uh-oh.
What?
Just the potential of losing connection.
Hey, anything's possible, right, Spectrum? Appreciate it.
Basically, yeah. God, I hope not.
I just found out somebody that works for the company too today, and I'm like, oh,
I have
yeah.
some questions.
I like them too much, like, to give them shit. So not gonna do that because that would be inappropriate and mean, and they would probably hate me for it. So
nice.
Let's start, shall we?
Yes.
10 across the board.
COL Drag Race.
Hey, kitty girls, it's May 21st, and welcome to Cubs Out Loud Drag Race T-Time, Season 10, Episode 9. For those of you that don't know who I am Gary. Welcome to our little show. And with me are my ever fabulous two co-hosts, and they are...
Hey, everyone, it's Damon. Hi, welcome.
Hi, Chester.
And before we get into what we do around here on a regular basis for the digs, we got something to talk about.
Oh, what?
What? Girl, she already done had hers is online. So we got feedback online about COLDR.
Yay!
This is over on the Tumbleland. So if you're in Tumblr and you happen to follow what Cubs Out Loud does over there, we don't have a COLDR account per se. Of course, that would make sense because there's so much drag content on there. Anyways, last week's guest, Ian, aka Jumpin' Jehoshaphat, he gave us some feedback and he said, I was on Cubs Out Loud. It was so much fucking fun, you guys. I hope you give it a watch or listen. Various podcast hosting apps, and tell me what you thought. In other news, I've managed to gain 25 followers since deleting my X-rated content. That I did not expect.
Wow.
So
that's weird because usually it goes the opposite way.
Yeah.
Yeah, you show some skin and then everything goes up. But well, you know.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes. I mean, I would happily look at Ian's skin anytime.
Look at this skin, honey. Look at all of this
skin.
Yes.
So I have a funny story. Just because I wasn't on the show last week, but because I was gaming, I happened to get the notification that you guys were going live, and I had my phone in my hand while we were playing, and so I happened to like turn to the live feed, and guess who pops up on my screen first? It's Ian. And I go, oh, he pretty. Loud, audibly, in the middle of the game. And everyone's like, what? And I'm like, nothing. And Rob Hall, who lives here in Cincinnati, and he's a fan of the show, happened to like catch me. He was sitting across from me. He was gaming with us. And he was like, what are you talking about? Oh, I kind of explained to him, the COL Drag Race started, and they have a special guest. And he's pretty, so
the special guest.
Yeah.
Yes.
So.
Well, we enjoyed having Ian with us last week. He was well composed, put together. He, was a little nervous. He had taken notes, so he did great. He's kind of a Drag Race super fan, I think, because boy was pulling shit out of he's like, oh, and so did this in this season and blah blah blah. And I was like, damn, I was like, people think that I'm thorough because I pay attention to episodes, but I have a bad memory now as I get older. So I can't remember who did what where. I know I made reference to you, I think, David, because I was like, if David was here, he'd be able to tell us the last time this happened in a season. And, because I'm just not that much put together. But so we got a little feedback. Yay!
Hey, thank you, Ian, for being on the show. It was nice.
Not only was he good to look at, but he was a great guest host as well. So
indeed.
That said, let's get into the tea, shall we?
Sure.
All right, so let's talk about, we had 3 segments this episode, a mini challenge, a maxi challenge, and the main stage runway. Mini challenge is called Pants Down, Bottoms Up. Then we had Breastworld, which is the, what was it? The premium cable prime time dramedy, whatever. It's a spin-off spoof parody of Westworld. And then we had the runway, which is Silver Foxy.
Yes.
Which I thought it was Silver Foxes, but I was wrong because I just happened to try to rewatch the episode again. And I was like, what? Oh, okay.
Keep it Foxy. Wonk, wonk.
So first thing is all the queens have to do the mini challenge. The mini challenge is basically the memory game. Can't be that hard, right?
Wrong.
Oh.
Well, when they put up like 20 and some guys.
Right. So my favorite part of this, well, there were 2 favorite parts, but my favorite part of this is, so Rue calls in the pit crew and you get 1 and then you get 2, like the 2 mainstay regular only guys of the pit crew. And my favorite line is, oh, and they just keep coming. Like all these men just keep walking in and walking in and walking in. And I was like, my.
Yeah.
So that happens. And then the youngest of the bunch apparently has the best brain. Aquaria wins. Then we get to move on to Breastworld. Her thing is, because she wins, she gets to take the script and assign parts. And interestingly, she doesn't assign parts. She lets everybody read the descriptions only and kind of get a feel for which character they want. She agrees with everyone. She takes what's left. Whether or not that was a good strategic move remains to be seen. And then they read the script. They go through it. Brew comes in, talks to them about their characters.
Yeah.
Mostly about like how you performed last week, how you've been performing all season. So you see the formula of what's going on. Then they go to the acting challenge, which is co-directed by Michelle Visage and Ross Matthews. Then we get to runway, and they're supposed to age themselves 50 years into the future. And that's what their runway look is supposed to be. So that's the encompassing of the episode. So, Chester, out of those 3 segments of the show, is there anything that that stood out to you or that you want to talk about specifically?
I don't really... I appreciate the mini challenge, but I think they're kind of silly.
Yeah, I'll actually like, because it kind of goes with my thoughts. Was the whole, this is pretty much the eye candy portion. Like, this is not about the drag race or about the, the competition or anything like that. This is all about like throwing ass and sexy men's is out there. Like that's pretty much all it was for.
Well, there were a couple of things. There was the product placement sponsorship crap. So Rounder Bum apparently is a new underwear apparel making company that I doubt Eureka O'Hara could fit into. And
there's probably several people that can't.
Well, that's true. Maybe Monet Exchange couldn't fit in either. you know, because she got a big old booty on her. That's the thing is I was like, okay, like, you know, so we got a product placement thing, and that's kind of the purpose of the challenge. Like, and it's very confusing. Some weeks the mini challenge actually serves a purpose. Like somebody gets an advantage, and then other weeks you just win something. And like that's the end of the story. Like, you know, you get a prize, I guess. So yeah, this week. It was interesting to say the least. But I could see where it's kind of like, like, all right, so we just ate up 8 minutes of TV show time, whatever.
Yeah, I appreciate those challenges just because it gives them something to do, and yeah, it has to, you know, do product placement and whatever. But I think they're too silly and too cheesy, and I don't really see a point in it. Unlike other challenges where they have to do like quick drag and do something, those are the kinds of mini challenges that I like. Like the is it season 6 with Katya? They're doing the thing on the beach
with the legs. Yeah,
season 6. Yeah, where one person's the body and the other person's the legs.
Yeah,
I like those challenges
because they're fun. And while I could respect, like, hey, it's, you know, no offense, pandering to the, you know, audience, as it were, and it was cute, and you know, there was a lot. I mean, I will own there was some decent guys that caught my eye. They just had some very interesting looks, but other than that, like I said, it's just very. I agree with you, Chester. It's silly, like I get why they do it, but it's a memory game. It has nothing to me. It has nothing at all to do with them being drag queens at all.
Like, so, well, that being said, this was really about them being men who do drag.
Yeah,
because my favorite parts are the more comedic parts where Rue says to, was it Monet? Like, are you intentionally trying to lose, like to stretch this whole thing out because she's apparently not making matches? And how Asia O'Hara goes first, and after she picks the first person, she just keeps staring. And she's like, "Okay, now you got to pick another one, girl." Like, you know, like. So I thought there was some good funness to that.
Yeah. So as I was, so my thoughts, like I said, eye candy portion. This is pretty much eye candy. The one thing I will bring up is, thanks to our COL Drag Race Entourage chat on Telegram, ding. We found out that one of the men's that came out was transgendered, and that I thought was really cool because I didn't realize it, and they didn't make a big deal about it, which I think I personally kind of liked. Like during the episode, he was just there, and looking at him until I saw the Entourage chat like talk about it, I didn't know who it was. So it just
right, and that's kind of cool. And that's one of the interesting things, because Peppermint has actually talked about this in terms of like being a trans contestant. Peppermint has said, like, you know, there are different things within the trans community, just like there are different things within the drag community, and so there is an expectation that everyone who's trans is trying to pass, and that's not necessarily the case. And that's what I find interesting about this, that Drew had mentioned. As a side note, one of the men was the first transgender pit crew member on the show, which I'm like, what? Because like there were 20 of them, and they were 20 beautiful looking men. Like they weren't all necessarily my type. I'll put my 2 cents in now. I will take numbers. I think it's 4 and 16 were the two that like kind of got my eye. Y'all will probably remember number 4 because Rue kind of got to dig in a little bit. Like, I think she was being kind of silly, but it sounded a little shady, where she was like, well, you ain't missed no meals, have you? And I was like, really, girl? You're going to come for him with his back rolls? Because that's really not right, because the man got a beautiful booty and nice thick thighs. So just, you know. Yeah, that was kind of my feeling on that in terms of the mini challenge. So yeah, I mean, it definitely is playing, I think, to the male side of things.
Yeah.
Between the two of you, before I say anything, y'all got thoughts on the Breastworld acting challenge?
It was terrible.
Yeah.
All of them. They were fucking terrible.
I don't think it was. I think, again, I don't know the parody. Like, I don't know Westworld. I don't know what the fuck it is. The only thing I've ever seen of Westworld have been parodies. One of those being like a gay, like, porn parody kind of thing. Yeah. Anyway, men.com, if you ever want to know. Like, they do all kinds of bullshit parodies. Anyway. And other than that, like, I didn't know the story. I didn't know what it was about. I didn't get it. And then we come in and they're robots, right? They're supposed to be drag queen robots, right? Okay. If that's the thing, okay. What? I don't get it. I don't see the robotic side of it, except for when they're doing the whole like thing. It didn't work for me. The joke didn't land. It didn't make sense. It was confusing. I was confused. Yes, there were funny parts, but overall, it was just kind of like, here's something we can do, and it felt to me like the Handmaid's Tale, thing in All Stars 3. It was, I think it's a little too late because it's not really relevant anymore because the show's not as popular as it once was. And therefore it kind of doesn't land. Like,
well, I found it interesting that right when this episode aired, I think it's the newest season of Westworld just kicked up again. So I was like, oh, I think there was some strategic planning about that. Funny. But I will say this because I'm sorry, this is too funny. Ginger says in the live chat, it was bad. Not Shakespeare bad, but pretty damn close.
Oh, bitch.
So Shakespeare was an acting challenge, I think, in Ginger Minge's season when she was on. And it's one of the most infamous, notoriously bad acting challenges in the history of the entire series.
Yeah.
So
this was
now Eric says in live chat, I was totally lost on the whole vision as well, and I thought all of the acting was pretty well crap. All right, so this is the thing I want to say. Chris D and I are live chatting on Thursday as it's up. And all of a sudden, I get it while this disaster is happening in front of our eyes on television. And I said, they're all trying to be robots. That's why they're failing, because that's not what the directors want. Michelle and Ross want them to act, but not to act like robots, not the stereotypical type of robot. And I think that's because, and I haven't seen the show, in Westworld, it is very difficult to tell that they are robots because they're so lifelike.
Oh,
right. And if you think that way, then it makes more sense why they were getting all the criticism for directing, and they were telling them like, no, that's fine, just try it the other way. But like, they weren't verbalizing that. And when I said it to Chris, he's like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. Why they're all fucking up so badly, because they're all thinking as robots, that part of the cast, they have to do these mannerisms and things. And Ross and Michelle are like, what are they doing? Like, this doesn't make sense. And I think that was where there was part of a disconnect. That's my theory. So
it makes a lot more sense.
Sure.
My feeling on it was no one understands acting. Like, across the board, no one understands acting. So crackers in her head, it won't get out of her head. Eureka got nervous, or I don't know. She just needed to be Eureka as Rosie the bingo bot and was fucking that up. Also, I don't understand this. I was so humiliated for her when Ross and Michelle make the entire cast and crew do Ivy Winters together as a group so Eureka can learn how to do it right. I was like, that is mortifying. That's like being called out in gym class when everything stops so the teacher or coach can have you alone practice whatever you need to do because you're so bad. Like it was just right up there at this crazy like anxiety level where they were just like, everybody do it together. And I'm like, no, everybody does not need to do it together.
Yeah.
Eureka just can't fucking get out of her head apparently or some shit.
It was just that just I would have like cried. Like just that would have been my like I know I'm not getting it right and I know I'm fucking it up and I feel like I'm fucking it up. And then she's like, okay, everybody do it. And I'm like, no, like fuck you. Like I'm not like that would I would probably like start crying because it would just be like the one thing that would have broke my like I'm trying to keep it together and I'm feeling flustered and then you're like, oh no, you're not getting it. Let's try it. And then everyone does it like, no.
So, and then you get Aquaria. She's like the only one who really kind of took direction. As weird as it is, she's the youngest and she's trying hard to be a robot in the beginning. And Michelle's like, don't do that. Like, let's try it. And then she does the other thing and she does it way better. And then Cameron is supposed to be Mitzi, I don't know, whatever. Muffy. Some like partially conservative, like has a straight man do her hair. I'm sorry, that was bad. Like if I was a straight hairdresser, I'd be offended by this concept that like straight hairdressers can't do good hair. I was like, that was kind of ignorant.
So I want to say one thing, and it's one thing that bothered me about their critique of Cameron.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know that they, they pick their outfits and what have you. And one of the things they said is like, you had your hands up and you should have worn gloves. And I'm like, why didn't you as a director, like either tell her not to keep her hands up because clearly, because it's breaking the, I'm a like super conservative, blah, 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 whatever. Although I don't, again, it was not the greatest acting overall.
It was just not a good concept.
It just wasn't a good concept. Yeah.
And I mean the show. I'm not being shady about Cameron. Like I admit when Ross says that later, not to jump out of sequence, but when he says it later, like in judges' critiques, I was like, why didn't Cameron try to cover up the tattoos? Because you can't. I mean, maybe you could. All right, you could tell me this, but I find it disbelieving that Cameron never, ever covers up her tattoos for any look.
Yeah.
Ever. Like I was just like, really, you don't have some pan stick, you don't have something to like cover the ink up. So because that I think would have helped sell the character a little more. It wouldn't have done anything for the acting, but visually,
at least on maybe a taller shirt on the to cover the one tattoo on her chest, and then and gloves for the hands. I mean, I know it's hard when you're probably not thinking about it because they're always there, but when the character goes for this, like you're going for this uber conservative kind of thing, the one thing that you think of is no tattoos.
Or at least you don't expect them. Or if they are tattoos, they're probably, I don't know, they're probably different tattoos.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to say is like, that's it for me for Breastworld. It's like, no one understands acting.
Yeah.
And then we get to Silver Foxy.
Oh, God.
The challenge is age yourself 50 years in the future. So it's supposed to be... Now, this is the part where it actually doesn't make sense. Because they said it was 2069.
Uh-huh.
It's now 2018. So that's 51 years. And they filmed this last year. So it was actually 2017. So we're actually fast forwarding 52 years into the future in order to actually hit that year for the joke.
Drew was making the joke a party like it's like 2069. I think he was trying to do the whole 1999 Prince joke again because everyone does that. End of the year, party like it's the end of the year, and they always do the 9 because it's whatever. Anyway.
Chester, was there anything in regards to the Silver Foxes or Foxy looks?
Just that none of them really spoke to me as aging. Like, I was expecting people to look a little bit more old, I guess. Like, who was it a few seasons ago that came out looking like what's her name? Valerie Harper
Oh,
from Mama's Family.
oh God, who did that? That
But she
wasn't
came out there with Walker and a big old ass and Sunday church clothing and huge glasses that were sliding down her nose. You know, where was that?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, that's pretty much what I wrote down, like on my as my thing. I cut like old question mark, because there's a certain thing when you think of someone getting older, and given that some of their ages are, we have what, 21 to like 30 something. So you age in 50 years, you've got 70 to 80s, in the age range. So there's some things that I did. I will give props to Cameron because I like the whole prosthetic, like old, very old looking face, because that definitely sold me for her on old. Everyone else just didn't like wow. Like I agree with Chester. Nothing really wowed me. Like I normally will mark something down like, oh, that's really good or that's great. And I didn't mark anything down. I felt like everyone just was kind of phoning it in a little bit. Let's throw on a gray, silver colored hair and wear something that is reminiscent of something an old person would wear, and do something kooky down the runway to kind of sell it. And that's really it. And that's kind of what I felt about the runway. I didn't feel really anyone like I will say I noticed a lot of like flats, and that was pretty much it. Like there were a lot of flats because apparently old people can't walk in heels, whatever. But it was just one of those things that I was like, it didn't wow me like I thought it would. You would think aging a drag queen and knowing that there are several queens in our drag race that are older, and I could have seen so much more. I agreed with the judges that I would have liked Asia to have been a more like old pageant queen. And I know she was kind of going for the comedy, and she's been doing that for a while, and it's not necessarily hitting the mark. So I want you to not necessarily go rely on that body or rely on their roots, but like I would have loved a fading drag queen in like a gown that's maybe like slipping down because the boobs are falling down, and a turban. Like I would have killed for something where they're wearing like a whole bunch of jewelry to hide the fact that they can't, their neck is all like blah, blah, blah. Like this, something to just kind of give it an older drag queen kind of feel. But that's just me.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally,
Yeah,
I ended up saying, where are the wrinkles?
yeah.
Like, yeah, a couple of the girls did some wrinkles, like they accentuated their natural wrinkles, with some makeup effect. But I was like, I'm confused. Like, as I said in our entourage chat for Drag Race on Telegram, I was like, where is the Dixie Wetsworth from Mad TV? It's one of my all-time favorite gag personality types. If you haven't seen it, look it up. There was a skit called Cabana Chat. It's this woman who lives in Boca Raton, apparently, who is like as brown as overcooked fried chicken. And she is super wrinkly as shit. She has this big bouffant wig. She's a pervert. She likes to have like a young pool boy that she's going to try to get laid with. She likes having a cocktail. Like, it's ridiculous. But what's funny about it, one of the things I love the most about that character is that they applied like a glue or something on her skin, or it was a prosthetic, but it might have been a glue. And when it dries, it shrinks and it makes a gazillion, like 1,000 wrinkles everywhere. Her décolletage was horrendous. It looked like she had lost like 100 pounds and then fried herself in the sun. It was so wrinkly and ridiculous. And nobody really kind of did that. And I was like, seriously? Like nobody decided to just cover themselves in glue and let it air dry and then like watch it get all weird and flaky and, and wrinkly and stuff. Like, I don't know. It was just really kind of surprising to me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, Drew says it needed to be more old drag, not old gag.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think necessarily they all hit the mark. I'm going to say this now. Eureka, you done shot yourself in the foot, because when you're asked about why you picked what you picked for the runway and you just want to blabber on and on about how fabulous your coat is and how good it makes you feel, I was like, yeah, that's a choice. It's not a good one necessarily, because even Rue called it out. And she said something about, it made her feel good. Well, that's good for you. What about us? And I was like, damn, like she really kind of got roasted on that. So, yeah. And I think what was difficult is, and one of the things I figured out, at least this particular season, the girls have very specific ideas about what the runway represents, and you hear the voiceover, but that doesn't translate into what you see. Like Miss Cracker talks about how she's like, she's got the exaggerated lip that you can see, and that she's kind of this like New York socialite, blah, blah, blah. But then she makes a reference to the fact that she's like replaced her hips and parts of her body. But I can't tell. Like, I can't see that. And none of that's being communicated to me through your outfit or the way you're behaving. So, like, but that seems to be consistent time and time again, episode after episode, when a queen says one thing and we don't get that.
Get it. Yeah.
And it reminds me of how Michelle Visage said, like, if you have to explain it, no.
Yeah.
Like, you didn't have to spell it out for the judges. So, and I think that's kind of the same when it comes to the viewers.
Yeah.
In terms of that. Are we ready to talk about Untucked?
Sure.
Girl, if you're not watching Untucked, you're only getting half the story.
Yeah, so I'm gonna admit this Untucked didn't stand out a ton to me. So anything,
like
Chester, for you that you wanted to talk about from Untucked?
No, yeah, nothing really stood out for me either.
So could that be because we've lost the Vixen? I don't know. Maybe, possibly. I don't know. Anyway, I don't know. It's just, for me, I will say this much. There were two things for me that kind of stood out, quote unquote, of the blah of the episode. The one is that we got Miss Cracker to see her mom and her I think her sister in one of the videos. And the thing she mentioned was that her last chance to see her. And the reason that she mentions that is she goes on to a story that her mother is going blind, and that, she has a disease that's potentially taking her sight. And I found that to be very touching, in that, they did the video and everything else, and like Cracker knows that she's losing her sight, and she knows she's losing her sight. So that's one of the reasons that drove her to try to get on Drag Race. So I thought that was very, touching and sweet. And then on the, not flip of that, but on the other end of that, Cameron kind of having a moment, because she's missing her family. And that we finally kind of see her quote unquote emotions. And she has a moment in the show where she's like talks about the fact that her father was emotional in a lot of ways, but he did not like what he considered weak emotions, things like, sadness and crying and what have you. And that is kind of made an impact on him and why, what he's been doing so far. Like we've seen it like in the past, like several episodes, like Cameron pretty much shuts down almost during most of the Untucked. She'll talk sometimes, but most of the time she's like in her head. And they always do. They started the episode of Untucked with the whole like Cameron telling everyone that she feels like she's definitely in the bottom, and she thought her performance was the worst. And they're all like, they're laughing and joking. Like Cameron always feels like she's, going to be in the bottom and she's going to lip sync. And I think this was the first time, well, no offense, she was accurate. She was right. Like, and I didn't get it last episode with the share challenge because I felt like, and obviously the judges felt like she slayed that challenge. This time I can see why she would feel that way. She wasn't necessarily, to me, I don't think she was the weakest. But when you put her up next to a couple of the other people in the challenge, I can understand where she kind of got that from. But that on top of she wanted to see her mother, her family, and their emotions were kind of like the kind of high points for me in Untucked. And that was really, honestly, kind of it.
Yeah, I will say this. Thank you for mentioning. And then Ginger Tea Time also said that Cracker's mom losing her sight impacted her. I too was like, here's our emotional heartstrings moment. We get something that nobody knows anything about. Apparently, Cracker's mom is literally like losing her eyesight degeneratively due to disease and will not be able to see anymore. I didn't quite catch that at first. Like, I'm glad they carried that a little bit further in the Untucked. So like within the next minute, like they kind of kept talking about it, and I was like, oh my God. Like, I didn't understand that. I didn't pick it up immediately. And then the more they talked about it, I was like, that's like awful, to be a person who has had sight for the majority of your life and then to just not be able to have it within months. The Cameron thing, like, so Christy and I kind of talked about this from like last week in our chat privately. The thing is that I said, I think that Cameron very much is kind of like pulling like a Vulcan aspect that, you stay logical, you don't really engage in getting involved in emotions. What bothered me about something that Cameron said that I completely disagree with is that emotions don't serve a purpose, a positive purpose. And I was like, hold up, girl. No, that's not true. Like, they can do a lot for you, but you're probably not able to see that right now. And that was the one thing that kind of bothered me about her perspective, but it made a lot more sense why everyone's saying she's so reserved and she's so quiet and she doesn't really get involved in things.
Yeah.
Well, if you are pretty much a very chill kind of Zen person, then emotions in a way are kind of drama. So you don't really care about that. Like, you see it as a dimension of personality that you're just not really going to get, in touch with or get in, around. But then this was interesting because she did get emotional. And she was having this moment. I felt bad for her because she was like, and now I'm upset and I'm crying and I don't know why I'm crying. Like, and I'm just like, well, girl, this will do it to you, as more and more has been revealed over the seasons. Like today, I ended up watching on Facebook, 4 of the New York queens from season 10 were at Facebook headquarters in New York, and they were doing a live interview on Facebook, kind of talk. And it was interesting because there was a whole bunch of shit that went down in that like was new stuff to me. And one of the discussion points was about how long it takes to film an episode, especially judges' critiques. And like Dusty Ray Bottoms and that were talking, and they were like, literally, we are in heels, like we are in full drag for 8 hours minimum. We could be out there on the runway for 3 hours for judges' critiques.
Oh God.
Right. And she's like, there's a reason why we break down. Which, when you think about it, I mean, and a lot of queens have said, like, you get done up and you go out for a gig, like, yeah, you'll be out at the bar. You might be out for a couple of hours, but you might have a chance to sit, I mean, like, there's other things going on. And usually Pride is the only time that you really run the gauntlet, because you have to be up at the fuck crack of dawn, get done up, do your pride thing, you know, your look or whatever, and you got to go do the if it's in a bigger city, let's say there's a parade and then there's a festival, and then are you the MC? Are you entertaining? Like, you know, so that's an all day kind of gig. But this TV show runs 16, 18 hours, 20 some hours a day.
Yeah.
For 3, 4, 5 days. And then another thing I found was very interesting was Dusty talked about, like, when she got eliminated, the elimination happened on a Monday and they were off for the weekend. So she's like, we did all the stuff up through Friday and then that's it. And then we got to wait 2 days before we come back to film on Monday. And then that's when we do the elimination like day stuff. And I was like, oh shit. Like, that's a mind fuck in and of itself, because you're trapped in a hotel room for 2 days, not able to do anything, and you don't have any devices and stuff like that. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff that I find.
Seems like an opportune time to memorize lyrics for
Where's that shade fan? I don't
Well, you know, I mean, it's kind of one of those things.
Yeah.
They're talking to the live chat. Cameron's thoughts on emotions being so indicative of a Southern man. That's interesting. It's unhealthy because they never learn how to cope.
Yep.
Eric says, how many times I was told boys don't cry as I was growing up. Oh, well, that's true.
Yep.
I remember when I was younger, I think it was 12, 14. But anyway, my grandfather died. This is the first time I'd ever dealt with a death of a family member, somebody that I knew.
Yeah.
And I remember coming home from school and my father telling me this, and I was just sitting on the couch processing it, and I started to cry, and my dad yelled at me.
Oh, yeah.
He's like, he said something to me that has stuck with me ever since. And it was just, I'm pretty certain that moment defined death for the rest of my life. Now, when I deal with death, I'm like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, you have, like, everyone has those, like, family and thing traits for, you know, like, boys don't cry and boys are not supposed to be, you know, it's there often. And given, like you said, like given that Cameron is from the South, it's a much bigger thing because there's a lot of, like, men are meant to be strong and what have you, and that's sometimes not going to happen. Sorry, it's suddenly storming here. And the one thing I will say that's kind of catty corner to it is that when Rue was in the workroom, one of the things she mentioned, I can't remember who, is she said vulnerability is power.
She was talking, I think, to Cracker.
I believe so. And it's just one of those things where I was like, you have the opposite kind of thing where someone is weaker, seeing weakness as a weakness, or sadness as a weakness, or emotions as a weakness. And RuPaul's pretty much telling someone else, like, being vulnerable, showing your vulnerability can be a powerful thing.
Yeah. So for me, in regards to Untucked, this is the one thing that stood out to me because it cracked me up to no end. Is I've got to give it up to the props. Chester, you mentioned it before that, like, whoever's doing, like, the directing or the set design or whatever is, like, fucking around because they, like, put certain things in certain places.
Right.
And I don't know when this happened or what season it came from, but there is a male inflatable doll in the background of the Untucked area. And I, to this day, can't recall when they used male inflatable dolls necessarily. I'm sure it was like in a mini challenge or some craziness. But there is one sitting in the background with, like, a jar or something right where his crotch goes. He's like just sitting lounging, and it's in one of the shots. It just cracked me up to no end because I had to pause. I was like, is that? Yep, that's an adult inflatable male doll in the background. All right. I mean, I guess if you spent, you know, between $50 and $100 for the damn thing, you'll probably, you know, want to hold on to it and get some use out of it.
wah.
Yeah, no, it really kind of cracked me up. So,
Okay.
are we ready to continue on?
Sure thing.
All right.
Ladies, this is your last chance to impress me and save yourself from elimination. Time has come to lip sync for your life. Good luck, and don't fuck it up.
Yeah. So, last chance to make an impression on Ruin. Don't fuck it up. Chester, anything that stood out to you for highs and lows, or as we call them, snaps and eye rolls?
No. No, not really. Like the whole entire episode was just very dull to me.
Understandable. I can get that.
I will admit, I had to think in order to come up with my snaps and eye rolls. So,
Yeah. I didn't so much have to think just because of what happened. Or
Okay.
at least for the snaps. So shall I? Shall I? Okay. So this was the snaps for me was the lip sync for Your Mother Tucking Life. This was I won't call it the best lip sync they've ever had, but it was a really good one. And it was if you spoiler alert, it was Eureka and Cameron in the bottom two. Deservedly so. You know, especially Eureka. No offense. I feel like I hate to say it. I felt like she phoned in the runway look, and she wasn't really just like getting the acting. And I hated that she was like the judges felt like they wanted something more from her. Well, given your improv in Snatch Game, and then proportionizing in the drag con stuff, you've done a lot of really great things where you're playing a character and you're doing really good. So it's expected in this season. I'm not talking about last season. I'm talking about this season. It's expected that you would do really, really well, just because of her experience on the show right now.
Mm-hmm.
Having said that, her and Cameron do like a really, really amazing lip sync performance. And it was New Attitude, and it was just a really good song given the runway, kind of looks that they were supposed to be older, and it just all kind of worked together. They both played to the choices that they had made in regards to their characters, but they were all having fun, and they were I'm glad that Eureka finally has let go. She was able to do her splits and do her, jumps and what have you. And Cameron has always been like athletic, and this is, I think, one of the first times we've seen her lip sync. I think.
I believe so, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've seen videos of her online on YouTube, and I know she's a good performer. And I think what works for her as a performer is something that has worked for me as a performer, is that you think about the song and you know what you're going to do. You're not just kind of letting it go off on the fly. You have a plan mentally about how the song's going to go, and you're going to have fun with it, and you're going to kind of let go of some of that too. So I really liked her performance. It was a great fucking lip sync. And they've done what a lot of I love the like double splits that happen like at the same time. Like those are just like everyone like jaws drop on those kind of things. So yay for that. So those were my snaps. Speaking of Eureka, since I was talking about her, my eye rolls are actually for Eureka's foundering. I felt like she was not giving us what we would have expected from her, as I mentioned before. The judges kind of felt that way too. And given that her part was simple in a sense, I didn't see a lot of Eureka in the part that I felt like there should have been. And maybe we can blame it on the whole, like, they're supposed to be robots part and that they didn't get that part. But for me, it just felt flat, you know, especially given that her, you know, kind of partner in crime was Aquaria, and Aquaria, you know, is not the greatest like actor. No offense, she's kind of monotony, and that kind of worked in a sense for some of the things they did. But at least Aquaria took direction well. So,
Right.
yeah.
So when I thought about it, the thing that stood out to me the most out of this episode that I'm going to give snaps for is to Cameron for her pill popping granny runway. Because while there was a prop and it was a little costume, it was definitively a character.
Yeah.
A character that a whole bunch of people have called forth. And I never watched this comedy primetime show, but I think the character's name is Yenta. It's the granny in The Nanny. A lot of people said that apparently that's who she reminded, like visually, aesthetically. This older, big white helmet hair, big glass, like probably Jewish, bingo playing, casino slot, you know, kind of grandma character, which I found interesting. Like, I thought it was a good move, even though it was a little kitsch for Cameron to have this kind of storyline about like the, you know, takes her pills or whatever, but she takes a pill and then she gets a pep. And I was like, girl, that is not a pep. Like, I don't know if that's like speed or ecstasy or what that shit was, because then all of a sudden you're just vibrating all around the stage and like, you know, all that kind of crap. But it helped deliver the concept of what she was doing for characterization. So that, to me, that's where I get the snaps, because when I saw that she was doing prosthetic, I was like, oh, here we go again. We're probably going to have this debate about how Aquaria had a mask and, you know, that whole thing. And then we didn't. Like, and they were, you know, they liked the fact that she had done the prosthetic and it really aged her and stuff. It was limiting, though, because like Cameron said in Untucked, she's like, I can't really move my face. And then when we get to the very end of the whole episode, which is funny because I said to Chris D, I was like, wait, what is the scene? That Chris had to point out, like, duh. Like, so spoiler alert, if you didn't watch the show, shame on you. For the first time this season, we had a double save.
Yep.
So Cameron and Eureka both have to lip sync for their life, and Cameron is safe first. And Eureka is try to keep a steel rod in her back, save face. Like, you know, is this, you know, this is the end kind of thing. You know, so now we're having the emotional roller coaster stuff that's been going on, you know, throughout the course of the episode, and Eureka's in the bottom. She, you know, came back for the next season. She's made it very far compared to where she was in the previous season. She's grown. You know, everybody who has always wanted like a big girl to be, you know, a winner is now basically devastated because Cameron is safe. And the way it works is one person is safe and then one person, Shantae's away. And then Rue says that she's also safe.
Yep.
And then Eureka breaks down, and she had said, you know, afterwards that like, I did my best to hold it together and I was really good until Rue said that I was saved. And then I was no longer good. And that's why, you know, she broke down and she kind of said like, you got me, girl. Like, and so normally we have the like talk to camera and the mirror thing and like the tweeter head statuette, blah, blah, blah. And that's what Christy says to me. That's why we're having this weird, the two and the bottom two back in Untucked on the couches talking to each other moment. Cause I was like, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
So yeah, that was the interesting thing to me was that they had that whole kind of conversation thing at the end. But it was Cameron's pill popping granny that actually you know, kind of I wanted to recognize. And as far as eye rolls go, I'm going to say it now. I think I said it in the entourage. I will say it probably for all of my life. I fucking hated Aquaria's runway look. Her 71-year-old version of her looked like absolute shit.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
and which is funny.
I didn't mind the prosthetic earlobe thing. Like when I saw her
hate
doing it in the room, I was like, all right, I get it. Like apparently she used to have big old plugs or whatever, you know, and now they're out, now they're all droopy. She's trying to make a statement. But the jacket thing with the little skirt or whatever, it was all pretty much the same tone. It was beige on beige on beige on tannish beige. The tights that she was wearing that were supposed to make her look like she had tattoos all over her legs did not match her skin tone and didn't fit right. They were wrinkly. The whole thing was just a disaster. It was the worst I've seen out of her the entire season. And I was like, for that alone, you belong in the bottom. I was just so
funny,
pissed about it.
Like if you, someone in our entourage chat posted some pictures that she, I guess, were taken of her, and the look that are in these pictures, I can see more as the 71-year-old Aquaria than the ones that we got, the one that we got on the runway. Like, this looks older and more like.
But even so, I'm trying to look for that link that someone had posted. Even so, I'm pretty sure that those pictures are not the exact same look. Even then, there was a difference in a change. I'm going to look at it right now because Ian had posted it. It's called The Aging of Aquaria. And I'm like, okay, first of all, in the first picture, you're not wearing a jacket. So you're wearing like the spike collar kind of thing. Again, it's beige. She just fucking doesn't learn. And then in the second picture, she's smoking a cigarette, but she's wearing like this kind of tight wrap, like I don't know what the hell that is, with some leather kind of like pieces over top of it. And her fingertips are all like black with black fingernails. I don't remember that from the actual runway.
Yeah.
So to me, this is a reinterpretation of the runway challenge, only you've had time to work on it until you made it better. That's the way I feel about it.
Yeah, I would have preferred this. I would have gotten this as like older than what she pulled out on the runway. It was very it just didn't land. Whatever she was trying to do, it just didn't land. And I wish that I kind of wish she had done something similar to, and I know she's going to hate this, similar to what Miss Cracker had done. Like a socialite or something along those lines, or kind of went the whole different run gamut and gone to like a comedy. Like, again, I would have, like Chester was saying, I would have liked a like walking on with a walker, because you know we've seen her perform and she falls and trips and splits and all that shit. You know, I get that. I would have liked to have seen someone go that route, where, especially Aquaria, considering she's the youngest of the group, if she had went from like 71, like 21 to like, instead of like 71, and went to like 101. Like, it just gone even older. Like, this is so fucking old. And just like, I mean, I would have liked that more than what she ended up doing. And I get what she was going for, kind of the whole, like, she's a fashionista, but it was awful. I don't know.
Yeah. And this is the part of the whole challenge for the runway that I had an issue with. Putting all the rest of that aside, I had issues every time a queen was like, I'm going to be pretty when I get older. Really, Grill? Okay. Like, you could believe that, but we have an impasse because while it's called Silver Foxy, I didn't see the judges really buying Silver Foxy a whole lot out of them. So that to me is also another like missed hit. So I would like this runway to be put to rest. I would like them to put it in a box and bury it and not bring it back, because I think it was just like crap all the way around. They didn't execute it well. It wasn't made very clear. It was just kind of shoddy, in my opinion. And I still don't like even the rehash of what Aquaria did. I do want to circle back real quick before we get into the cool down about the Clutch Your Pearls moment when the double save happens. I will fully own, I cried, I weeped, I was like not pretty looking, because while Cameron gets called safe and I'm processing that Eureka's going to go home, I was kind of okay with it. But then Eureka's reaction didn't help.
No.
And I didn't realize how like angst I was about the fact that Eureka was going home. You know, and like, I mean, Eric said in the chat, his 8-year-old daughter literally had an ugly cry meltdown thinking that Eureka was going home.
Oh.
And I get it. Like, if you're really heavily invested in a queen, you know, and as a contestant and you want them to do well and then they go home. Yeah. And I think part of the issue is that it's harder when the person does really well and then they don't do well. Like, Cameron still to me is a sleeper. So if Cameron had gone home, I don't think anyone would have been crying a whole lot over it. Like, some people would have cried, but I don't think people would have had like a meltdown over it.
Yeah.
And so I just think like Eureka's possibly due to narrative or whatever, just been out there more and like people were more invested and they've seen her do really well. And then like, you know, to kind of go home on a shoddy performance and not so great runway. Well, it's supposed to go that way, you know. And I will say this, like, I don't have qualms with Rue making the double save. Yes, it was a really great lip sync, probably the best of the season in terms of like entertainment purposes. I liked it. But I was like, okay, my question now is like, is there going to be a double elimination next week?
Yeah.
Like, make up for this? Or did we just buy ourselves a week? And now we're going to go down to 5 this week, and then we'll go to the final 4. So, which kind of gets into our next thing. Maybe.
Gentlemen, start your engines, and may the best woman win.
All right. So for the best woman win, Chester, any final impressions for last call?
I wasn't really happy with the double save.
Okay.
Oh.
I think it's an engineering tactic for keeping those two people in the game.
Well, Christy just said in the live chat, there was no return queen, so a double save keeps it on track.
That's true.
True.
Which, Chris, of all the people that watches like these reality contest shows, there's a mechanics to it. And Chris, while I love you dearly, you drive me fucking crazy when you point out shit like this, because it just brings home all the more the conspiracy theory crap that goes out there about like the manufacturing of a show.
Yeah. And it's funny you mentioned that, because Jim, I was when Eureka got saved, the first thing I was like, oh, thank God, you know. And then I realized, I'm like, oh, so maybe the theories are starting to come true. And Jim was like, what do you mean? And I go, oh, well, and I explained, like, there's a whole like theory theme that people are hounding for, clawing for a big girl to win. And that's why people often feel like Eureka's kind of been, not necessarily been gliding. She's not been sliding through like easily. Like, obviously she fell on the bottom this week, but the reason why she was saved is not necessarily just because of the lip sync. It's like you said, Chester, it's very much a game mechanic kind of move. It's very much a like, we're going to keep her here because we want her to at least get to the end for blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, okay. Like I loved it. And then like immediately that's where my head went. Is like, okay, this is the reality TV portion of the show where, you know, like the same thing happened to me with All Stars, the first All Stars, when both Dujabi and Raven are saved because one of them was supposed to go home, and then they find out, oh no, they're you know, one of them staying, and I was just like, like it's beautiful in the moment, but then you have to like realize, okay, then they have to do something. They obviously have the plan to make this work. So it can't just happen. Like that's the thing. Like the thing you always have to realize is something like this can't just happen. She can't just go, oh, and you get to stay, and you get to stay, and here we go. Because again, if there were, 14 queens, you're eliminating them weekly, then there's going to be a point when you're going to run out of episodes.
Right. Well, and that's just it. I mean, basically, we would have 10 episodes, 11 episodes, 12 episodes. Like, we don't know exactly what the number is, but there were 14 queens, and if you're going to get down to the final 4, if we're repeating what we did with season 9,
true,
then that gets us to the finale. So you just bought yourself a week by doing the double save. I think it's interesting. Eric in the live chat said that he read an article the other day, and he's going to go look for it, about how we're being force-fed Eureka. Interesting idea about how, like, we're being basically spoon-fed her strategically, whether or not that's to reveal the win. I mean, we talked about it with All-Star Season 3, that there was a rumor going around and a large presumption that Trixie Mattel was going to win because her pop vinyl doll had been released and nobody else, like it was a very odd standout kind of thing, because only Rue and Alaska had pop vinyl dolls. So everybody was like holding it up in conspiracy theory land, like, see, this says that, like, she's going to win. And so you go through the whole season just kind of paying attention and looking for things. And then we end up with that crazy ass finale thing with the judging by the other queens and how it plays out. And then she wins. And I'm like, okay, so that conspiracy theory was kind of true. The conspiracy theory about Bibi Zahara Benet being a plant and playing into the whole, like, Handmaid's Tale, she's a spy, blah, blah, blah. That apparently was all bullshit. So that's where I'm kind of like, all right, I don't know where this is going to go.
Yeah.
That being said, Damon.
Yeah, I mean, I think pretty much you and I are kind of on agreement in this, and that we're at the final 4 phase of this, the show. We're near that. We've got down to 6 queens, so we need 2 more to go. And in my personal opinion, I feel like the 2 queens that are going to be leaving soon are, sorry, I think it's Miss Cracker and Monet. Like, I love Monet, love her to death. But I feel like there's they've mentioned it before. Like, Cracker usually does really well on runway and fails in the challenge. Miss Monet does really well in the challenge, and I would just say it kind of fails often on the runway. Her looks are not always there. Her glitter look last week just hurt me so much because it just anyway. So I'm getting this feeling that they're the 2 that are kind of they're the ones that are even each other out and then take each other out in a sense, because there's not really anything grabbing at me to keep them anymore. Like, so that leaves Asia, Eureka, Cameron, and Aquaria. And the only reason Aquaria for me is up there is because she has started to, start winning and progressing, and she's doing really well, and she's falling into the top a lot more often than not now. She won Snatch Game, and that's a big win. So it's just saying to me, and I if I were to pick a top 3, my top 3 would probably be Aquaria, Eureka, and Cameron. Because Asia I'm trying to love her, but this week's runway was a misfire for me. I got it, don't get me wrong, but I think it just like she was, like you were talking about, like the over, what they're talking about in the voiceover. just doesn't it didn't work. It didn't match for me. This doesn't look like what you're trying to say, what you're trying to sell me.
Mm-hmm.
So
okay.
yeah.
For me, my last call, I said Final Four is ... I'm curious to see who the Final Four is. I do agree with you, David, on the likelihood of who the Final Four is, but I don't know if that's going to be completely true. The one thing I could guarantee about this game is that shit happens and just ain't nobody prepared for it. But recently, nobody's been saying that in interviews. So that tells me that we don't have any more shakeups coming. Like, we don't have any more craziness. So if that's the case, then yes, most likely those that haven't really won are going to be the next to go. As Ginger said in the live chat, Monet is going next. She's been in the bottom twice. No one survives their third, kind of thing. So that's a potential. All right, so that's episode 9, Breastworld. So here's the thing. If you would like to contact us, there's lots of great ways to do that. You can go to cubsoutloud.com. You can send us an email, which is cubsoutloud@gmail.com. You can also leave us a voicemail message. Sexy, inappropriate, harassing, otherwise not harassing. That number to call is 361 COL Talk. That's 361-265-8255.
Leave us your best drag queen impression.
Social media outlets. If you want to get in touch with us, Instagram, Facebook, Tumblr, Twitter, Google Plus, and YouTube. Just type in Cubs Out Loud as one word. In that case. Entourage social chat. So this is the important thing. If you want to kind of, see what's going on with us and the other folks that are in there discussing COL Drag Race, you can go to tinyurl.com/telegram, which is TELEGRAM hyphen, and then in all caps COLDR for Cubs Out Loud Drag Race. Also, you can support us for COL. You can do two things. You can go to the merch store, which is zazzle.com/Cubs Out Loud. And there you will find some stuff that is Cubs Out Loud. And it happens to have our Drag Race logo, which I am not currently sporting. This happens to be our regular logo. But just imagine this with a fabulous crown. And then in pink, it says Drag Race. So you can get a shirt. You can get a purse or a clutch, different things of that nature. You can also become a patron over at our Patreon online. You can go to patreon.com/Cubs Out Loud. For as little as $1 a month, you can support us anywhere up and above that you can afford. We have some nice goals and things that you're going to get rewarded for if you do that. Also, we'd appreciate you promoting Cubs Out Loud. Here's the important thing that's changed in the past week plus. Go to iTunes and rate us. However, if you're going to go to iTunes, you can now specifically look for Cubs Out Loud Drag Race as its own thing. So what we decided is, and Jeff worked on this, now all of our Drag Race episodes, which those of you on YouTube are actually watching us. But if you want the RSS audio feed version, you can actually get that through iTunes. So it's been separated out. So if you want a link to be able to do so, instead of doing a search, you would type in https://tinyurl.com/iTunes. That's small I, capital T, small UNES, hyphen, capital COLDR, all caps. And there you can actually get the podcast for iTunes. You could go to Google Play Podcasts and subscribe for Cubs Out Loud Drag Race. And then Stitcher Radio, of course, you can give us a thumbs up. You can rate us and all that stuff. We'd appreciate it. If you want to get in touch with us, Chester, where would they find you?
You can find me on Tumblr or Twitter under the name The Pup Up There, or various beer dating sites across the net under the name Pup Shutter or Cupcake76.
Damon.
You can find me as Theater Cup 79 on most bear dating sites or what have you, including Growler or even Facebook. Or you can find me as pup_umbra on Twitter.
And if you would like to get in touch with me, you can find me pretty much anywhere online as Garbear73. That's GARBEAR73. That being said, we're going to rock it to the moon like they do on the show for our exit, because that's the rap, kids.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.